Okay, welcome back from the little break. We're going to do a little flashback into what has happened in the past year. That's the first part of this talk. And the middle part is Jan, our CTO, talking about where he sees Magnolia going technology-wise in the next 1 to 3 years. And we'll finish off with Topher looking at the roadmap of what Magnolia does next. So a 3-part talk, and this should take about 45 minutes. I want to first call out this address here. We have a Slido running where you can put questions for any of us. So go into that address and type a question, and we'll try to tackle them at the end of the talk. First of all, my name is Antti. I'm a product manager at Magnolia, and I'll be doing this talk with Topher and Jan. And we kind of wanted to first look back at what has happened in the past year. Some of you we saw in last year's conference, and you may have been wondering, what have we been up to? But I'll turn that around and ask rather, what have you been up to? Let's start by looking at some of the very cool projects that you have built over the past year. And out of the many, many sites that you've built, I chose 3. First one is Rossmann. It's a German pharmacy chain, a drugstore chain that our partner Aperto built. And this site is a great, great example of a completely responsive web store. It's the first completely responsive web store in German pharmacy market, and it scales beautifully when you drag the browser or look with a different device. The products tile up nicely, and it really makes it possible to shop pharmacy products right there and then with any device. Another very cool example is the Pâté Swiss cinema chain here in Switzerland. Our partner Namix built this site, and what's great about this site is that it makes the going to a cinema and organizing a cinema visit with your friends an event itself. On this site you can choose a date when you'd like to go, and with WhatsApp and Doodle integration you can schedule the right time with your friends right through the site. Send out invitations, should we go on this date, and where should we meet? So before you even hit the movie screen, you're getting together as an event. And finally, the third example is the New York Times. We're thrilled to have this big brand under the Magnolia umbrella. So our partner Crescendo in the US has built the subscription and subscription advertising side of New York Times with Magnolia. So we are trusted with collecting more subscriptions. Those green parts that you see on the screen that invite people to subscribe to the Times, and everything having to do with subscriptions on the site is based on Magnolia. And you know that the publishing industry has been hit hard by digital disruptions. We're really, really happy to have this big brand with us.
Yeah, but you've been doing a lot more than just projects. We did the component competition this year, and it was great to have your participation. We had 10 really cool components shared on NPM. I think the winner of the contest is actually here today, Matthias Müller. So congratulations to him. I love stock art. But it really is, he's the winner, but it really is a win-win because these components that have been developed are now available on NPM. They're all open source, and anybody in the community is welcome to use them and, of course, improve them. And he did a really great job with this Google Maps integration. It's got all the detail that you would need or an author would need. There's even directions and so forth. But there was many, many submissions. The judges at Magnolia were really impressed with the quality of the work that came in. So yeah, these are all available on NPM. You just search with Magnolia Lite module. The cool thing is that we also built this into the CLI command line. Now, from our command line, mgnl, you can actually search for a package that might be useful for your project, and it's going to look for those same modules. But that wasn't the only contest. You might not realize, but the Spanish office also ran a contest. The winners were announced just recently at the Open Expo conference in Madrid. And we actually The Spanish office really outclassed us with a $2,000 top prize. So, but those also resulted in some great open source work. I'll just call out one of them. They're all interesting, but one of them actually tackled something we've been interested in a long time, which is what if you could create a content connector for your app based on REST purely through configuration without any coding necessary. So that's available now on GitHub. But you're doing more than that. We also started the suggestion box about 1.5 years ago, and many people have been putting in their suggestions, what they would like to see as improvements for Magnolia. Things like, that the resources servlet, you can configure what's forbidden, remembering the scroll position when you're switching pages, or like a preview thumbnail in the asset chooser. And these have all been completed. I also want to thank you for the blog post that many of you are writing. This is great to have the voice of the community on Magnolia. And there's the support tickets. We're always so excited to get support tickets. It's always a shame that there's something not working, but this is how the product is improved. And you are critical to making that happen. So that's appreciated, the time that goes into describing the exact problem. But now, let's get to what we've been up to.
Yeah, so seriously, what have we been up to? Topher, for all year long, we've been doing these release walkthrough videos. We explain what happens in the latest release, we tape it, we put it on YouTube. So this part of the talk is done. We can just play those videos.
Okay, perfect.
Let's roll it. So here's the...
Yeah, that's good.
Right.
Yeah, but let's just go back to the 547 one. That's the one that was after the last conference.
This is a walkthrough of another Magnolia maintenance release, 5.4.7 this time. And again, Topher and I... Yeah, so that was it. Thank you very much. I've got 45 minutes to go. So I was born... No, wait. If we're talking seriously, there's been a whole bunch of changes that we've done to the UX, to personalization, to a whole bunch of areas in the product, and I'll just highlight a few of them. This particular improvement is the app switcher, which allows you with a keyboard shortcut switch between Magnolia apps like you would do in any operating system in OS or Windows. It's yet another improvement is what Topher already mentioned. The pain point that many of you have brought up in the past is when I'm looking at a list of assets or I'm choosing an asset, I want to see the image. Show me the thumbnail. Images are visual. I want to see what I'm choosing. So we've added thumbnail view into the tree view in the Assets app. Also, a preview of the image is shown on the right there when you have one selected. And the same works also in the Asset Chooser dialog. And these thumbnails are cached on the first round. They're very fast. They load fast afterwards. So performance-wise, it's also a very nifty improvement. Then another repeatedly articulated improvement is the ability to copy components between pages on the same page or between pages, between sites even. So here's a little animation of how that works. You simply select a component, go to the target page, and choose where you would like to paste it. It will either copy in all the components in the area or a particular one that you've chosen, and it checks for availability conditions as well. So if the component is not allowed in the target area, it doesn't get pasted. Topher, this is your favorite.
That's true.
Viewing a page without the Chrome, without the Magnolia Chrome. There's a little button now at the top right corner that opens just that page, the view, and so you can see it without all the hassle around it.
What do you guys think of that one? Anybody using it? Huh? All right.
Thought so. The definitions app is exactly what it says. It's an app that shows definitions from all possible configuration sources. So here you could come and look for what are all the component definitions I have in the system, or show me all the dialog definitions from a particular module. It's a kind of the conclusion of a long journey on how to make configuration more visible to users. And I want to spend a little bit more time on the personalization improvements, because this is a rather nice story that involves you. Over the course of the last year, we did several interviews with clients, with community members like you, with partners, talking about what is the next relevant step in personalization in Magnolia. And many of you said component personalization. We need to have it. Doing variants of pages is too rough, too big, too coarse. Allow us to make variants of components so we can make surgical changes. So we delivered that. And what's interesting about the delivery is we put it into a maintenance release 5.4.9. Usually maintenance release is just fix bugs, do smaller changes. But we'd like to reduce the importance on big release numbers. You can get significant beneficial features also in smaller releases. And how you can use component personalization has turned out rather interesting among our clients. We first feared that if we allowed editors to do page and component variants at the same time, these scenarios could get too complex, hard to understand. But you said, no, we can handle it. Give us the option to do both at the same time. So you know how a page can have variants. Here I have a page that has variants 1, 2, 3. Each of those variants can then have components, and the components again can have variants. Potentially this gets very complicated, but here's a couple of interesting ideas how to use it. Our client Invesco in the US is basically a collection of funds. And Invesco has 3 types of visitors mainly. You can either be an individual investor like you and I, or you can be an investment advisor, or you can be a professional financial advisor. And what Invesco does is they show different variants of pages and components depending on what type of a user you are, first of all. And once you're on a page, depending on the status of whether you're logged in or not, you again see different content. The financial industry is an example of where everything is highly regulated. So depending on the type of the user, you have to show certain content to them. Here's another example from one of our clients in Spain. Telefónica is a big telecommunications company, Europe-wide actually, not only in Spain. And they chose to do page variants based on the visitor's bandwidth. Whether you're browsing the site on broadband, on 2G, on 3G, you get a different variant of the page, more slimmer when your bandwidth is narrower. And then on the component level, every day of the week you have different content. One day of the week you might promote a particular TV show, for example. And one more example of how you can use this functionality is Telefónica, again, shows different content depending on the visitor's OS. If you come from an Android phone, then you might see gaming content first, because that's the type of content that Android users on that site use most. If you're an iOS user, you might see music content.
Yeah, and then I just wanted to highlight a few of the changes that we did in light development. So it's still a busy year for light development. Many more things became available via YAML configuration, like the site prototype, themes. You can put IE10N files in your light modules. We really speeded up the observing on the file system, so it's very responsive. Whenever you make changes, those are live right away. We support symlinks for your light module directories and better Windows support. We introduced the CLI last year at the conference. You can have dependencies between your light modules. So the main point I want to make is that it's really mature now. A lot of people are using it, and a lot of people are really enjoying it. And if you haven't checked it out yet, I really encourage you to give it a shot. I guess you can see this quote. This is from Crescendo Collective, who was working with New York Times light development is exactly what they want for their projects. Of course, it doesn't make sense for every single project. You're still going to have the Java-heavy projects, but it can work well in concert with a Java. Java developers and front-end developers can work together very nicely using Maven modules and light modules. So I think a main point I wanted to make is that we're very happy with where it is now. It's mature, it's in production, and we're moving our focus now on to other improvements, which you'll be hearing about soon. But just maybe for those of you who haven't seen it or used light development, maybe one way to illustrate its power is that you're not working in a user interface of an app. You're not working in Admin Central so much, or anything. You don't have to learn a new interface. You're working with the files and using the tools that you know. So for example, you can package your functionality in what we call light modules, and it's simply a directory, simply a logically organized directory, your templates, your dialogues, etc. And anytime you make a change, the system picks that up right away. So it's quite a nice developer comfort. Maybe to illustrate those features and the CLI, it would help to have a video.
So you want to get started with a new project in your CMS. What if you could just enter one command and the folders you need were created automatically? And another one would create a whole new page template for you. And how about some components? Or even download and set up your entire CMS. With Magnolia CLI, you can do just that. It handles common tasks with one command. It wires everything up for you, accelerating your development tenfold. And it assists you every step of the way.
Actually, I'm kind of curious, maybe how many people have used the CLI in their projects? Okay, how is it going with the CLI? Good? Okay, excellent. Okay. Some grumbling? No? No? It's all good? Okay. So we've been through highlights from the product team from the last year. I just wanted to mention that there's a lot of other innovation going on in the services team. Some of these modules have already matured enough that they're part of the product. Most of them are still in a sort of an incubation stage. I encourage you to, if any of these topics look interesting, or you have any other specific topic that's not already addressed by Magnolia, to get in contact with the services team. There's a lot of great work there. So, what a year. Now we transition to the second part of our talk from Jan. So,
audio, yes, hello, okay, cool, again, thank you. Before we start with this part of the talk, maybe just one last thing regarding the CLI. I realized maybe it's so perfect we don't need to talk about it, but in case you want to talk about it, I just dared to add there one ad hoc unvoted session to the unconference. So if there is anything you want to know about CLI or such as improvements or anything, just feel free to work on that or to come to that session and we will work on it. Now let's move. Since we have those very nice logos everywhere on the hoodies, and I just dared to add little teaser in the slides to maybe keep your attention. There are songs from Metallica, the names of the songs hidden in the slides. Try to count them, let's see how many you can find, and maybe you find them all, maybe not, let's see. So, and yeah, before actually I get into the vision, we don't have only core product, which Topher and Antti were presenting, we also have Magnolia Now. And you should know that now it's actually released as of yesterday. It's live, it's productive. So if you want to use it, if you want to try it, just let us know. With the Green Jungle release, what we did actually, we already released this last November, right? So this is a new release which is out, and with that new release, we have global availability. So no matter where you are, is it Europe, is it Asia, is it US, anywhere you are, you can have it. We moved everything to Amazon now, so you really, anywhere where they have the data center, you can have it running. And we also added some features like the zero downtime update, so you can basically have your Magnolia upgraded, or we can have the environment upgraded without actually going down, without any interruption in service. Those of you who have to set it up in production know that it's not as simple to automate it. It takes some work, so now you can have it for free with the system itself. Again, just a reminder, we were showing similar thing already last year. There is actually, what you get with Magnolia now is not just the number of instances or number of environments. You get the whole new way of working. You get lots of best practices which we baked in the system. And we are actually quite confident that if you follow the way of working with the system, that, and again, that's something which we were already presenting last year, and for some reason it's blurred, whatever. That if you follow the way of working with that system, the way it's designed, it will actually make your life easier. I can guarantee that. I shouldn't say it, right? But I do. Anyway, inside of that package, what you have, or inside of the enterprise offering, you have number of environments. There you can transfer the content seamlessly between the environments. There was a question that we have the session about how you transfer content from production to the pre-production environments if you need to test something on the live content. Well, that system does it for you. Similarly, it's able to handle some load for you. You can have multiple sites there. You can have quite some space for your data. If you need more, again, there are more options, and there will be even more options. And maybe last thing, so what will happen there, we will be preparing another release, or we already started working on another release. And with that release, we provide you with more options on what you can have, what you can choose for your system. And we will also have the enterprise headless. I always want to call it headless enterprise, but marketing insists on enterprise headless, so enterprise headless it is. And throughout the day, if you have more questions about Magnolia Now, Eva is here in audience, the product owner, product manager for Magnolia Now. Maybe if you can just wave the hand or stand. Yeah, there she is. And Nicolas, the implementation team lead, also in the audience. Nicolas, around? Yes? No? Hiding. There he is. Yeah. Okay, just next to Eva. Very cool. And of course, that's not all, right? We have even more things for you. Because as soon as you start working with the system, with Magnolia, you realize there is not only maintenance, there is not only keeping your systems running, you also need much more things. Many of you mentioned you have Solr integration for better search. You have maybe some user-generated content. Maybe you want to put in some AI. You have to work on the performance improvements, etc. There's lots of things that you want to do. And the bigger your system is, the more committed you are to it, the more work you have to do, and more other additional things you have to configure. And as much as we try to help you, there is even more that we are able to do for you now. So as of today, I would like to introduce you to Magnolia Connected Services, where we basically provide those services for you. You don't have to configure everything from the scratch. You don't have to do everything yourself. You don't have to maintain everything yourself. Whether you are on the cloud or whether you are on-premise, we have a number of services, some of them now in the beta, so search, user-generated content, more of them in making. And you can just have those services rented from us, so you don't need to maintain your Solr cluster. You can just come to us and we will hook you up. All you have to do is configure Magnolia, and that's it. You have it running, and you have fast search, etc. And like before, if you want to know more about it, Karel is the guy to go to. He's also somewhere in the audience hiding. Maybe if you can wave your hand at us. Yeah, they're standing in the very back on the other stage with the other screen, bigger than this one. Okay, so that would be for the connected services. And now let's get to where Magnolia will go. Before I go further, I just would like to warn you that anything I'm going to say from now it's a vision, it's the idea where we might take the system. There are many things which we are evaluating. Not everything might happen, and not everything might happen in the order in which it's presented. But this is where currently I see the system going, based on the discussions internally, based on the discussions with you. Also, to set the time frame, it's not happening right now. It's not happening with 5.6. Don't expect to get it by end of the year. It's something which will be done in stages over time and over next couple of years, not months. So the core, of course, it's perfect, right? But even though it's perfect, there is a couple of other things that we could do and that we could change to make the system even better. There is number of code decoupling which we can and which we want to execute in order to simplify the stuff for us, in order to make it easier for you to work with the system, to work with the different parts of it, with different modules. Again, topic for the unconference already mentioned by Michi earlier. We would like to define better public and private APIs for you, for ourselves, in order for you to be clear if you are using something, you can be sure that we guarantee the backward compatibility for it. But same way, freeing for ourselves some space and being sure that we can innovate faster, that some of the things which are maybe publicly accessible but not meant for the public usage, we can change them faster and we don't have to follow the 2-year deprecation cycle and everything, which sometimes is a hindrance to what we are changing and what we are doing. And the other things. I would actually start to talk about it in details backwards. So what we have is, if you install Magnolia, what is the first thing that you do, or what is the first thing that we recommend you to do? Anybody? On the public instance, what would you do first for a productive environment? Exactly, lock it down. What we recommend and what we tell you to do is get rid of the admin central there. Disable it, protect it, make sure that nobody except you can access it. So, do you actually really need it there? What if, and now let's get our imagination loose, that's where the fun part starts. What if we just, with 5.3, we introduced the JCR3 apps. With 5.4, we added some more apps, we added some REST container, we added the first REST app. Anybody know which one that was? Yes? Yeah, cache browser. It allows you from the outer instance, you can actually browse the cache on the public instance. And that's done over the REST. There is a REST container which just talks to the public. So you can already manage something which is living on public from the outer instance. Then we worked on performance. We are now working on other things, and we will be working on even more things. And this thing keeps changing. So imagine what if the public instance didn't have the admin central at all. What would happen? Do you need it right now? Probably yes, because there is some security stuff. Maybe you need to do some cleanup. You need to maybe lock down some stuff, etc. There are some little tasks for which you might still need it, but those are just the little things. What if we really walk the full mile and make sure that you can administer all your public instances easily from the outer instance? You then don't need the public instance with the admin central. It would be just a repository and publishing service serving the content rendering engine on remote, right? And if we go there, if we do this for the public instance, what about if we do it for the outer instance as well? What about if we separate the front-end part of the back-end office? Sorry, it's convoluted. I hope I'm not losing you. But what if we separate the admin central itself from the repository, from the content? Wouldn't that have tremendous benefits for you, for us, for everybody? So let's see what those benefits are actually. If we do this kind of separation, first of all, it would force us to do some changes in the code base. It will actually enforce the separation of the code base. You probably don't care so much about it. It will gain, or we will gain, you will gain some independence in the libraries used. If you are working with the backend code, there will be different libraries than the front end is using, so there is less potential for the conflict in case you want to introduce some other framework in there. The deployment itself will get smaller. Right now, the public instance and the outer instance, both of them get exactly the same copy of the admin central. There would be just one, which would be used by all of them, right? Similarly, just by proxy, we will get the better performance because the public instance deployment is smaller. There is no stuff you don't need. And there is other things like the maintenance of it will get simpler because we have independent life cycles and so on and so on. So moving on, I don't want to bore you, and I was told I have very little time, which I'm already exceeding. So with that, if we do this, if we separate the author, the admin central, and from the instances, couldn't we simplify the configuration as well? Right now, how many of you are actually annoyed every time you start a new version of Magnolia, even though it's on your computer, even though it's still the same, the very same installation goes on for, I don't know, a minute or two, depending on your computer? How many of you find it annoying every time you have to install it? Exactly. Me too. So with this kind of separation, the configuration will be baked in the repository service. The admin central doesn't need to know about it because it will just change based on where it connects, based on to what it connects. And it can be basically baked into the system. We don't need to re-execute all the same things again. Of course, there are still updates and the other things. There is the pain with the version handlers. That all will have to be part of the solution, and we will have to address all those things. And similarly, then, we would not need to install or not install different features on the admin central based on whether it's auto instance or not. We could simply just use the feature switches and enable or disable the features. We actually have this already for some of the minor features. It's not so visible, but in my opinion, that's the way forward. Similarly, public-private API. As soon as we do this kind of separation, if we do that kind of separation, then immediately we ourselves are forced to define those APIs much better. We ourselves are prevented from leaking the stuff which is related to the backend into the front end. So you don't end up with, I don't know, say column formatters which leak the JCR code and which are usable only with the JCR backend. But if you have your JCR free app, you cannot use them because they just expose the API from the service, from the repository behind. And I could go on the distributed code base. Let's just skip that part. Anyway, it's not the only thing we are doing. We are doing many more research, trying different technologies, trying different things, and I really don't want to steal too much time from my colleagues, so maybe just last teaser of what we are doing. I hope audio is up.
About Magnolia.
Yeah, if you didn't hear, there was a voice command which was told to open or to find an open article about Magnolia. If you don't want to talk to your Magnolia, you can also just type whatever you want. And that's the little micro demo of the kind of things that we are doing with Magnolia. Again, there is a session in Unconference about this, and there is much more cool stuff that you can do. I just don't want to steal the thunder from the guys. So I hope you woke up now after that video. And if there is anything I want you to remember from this talk is that what we focus on, what we are trying to do, and where we are taking Magnolia is in the direction which helps to solve your problems, which helps to... We see the complexity that you are facing. We face it in our projects, in the stuff that we do as well, and we try to take this complexity away where we can. Sometimes it's not as fast as you want. Sometimes, or often, every day, it's not as fast as I want. But we are doing all we can, and we are trying to make your life easier. So you can do your business, and we can do ours. Now, the most important question, how many songs did you count it? 7 is the first guess. Anybody? It's close, but not exact. Anybody else? Okay, it was very close, but it's 10 actually in total. Some of them were paraphrased, they were not the original. Of course, they didn't have the and Magnolia for all. But anyway, with that, I hand it over back to Antti or Topher or both. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. So the last part of this talk is forward-looking. We'll look at what is on the product roadmap next. Topher will first talk a little bit about how do we do product management here.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe you've wondered, how did we choose those features that we worked on in the last year? How are we choosing the items for the roadmap for next year? Well, the main key answer is that we're really focusing on doing research-driven product management. So what did the Beatles have to do with Magnolia? Well, we named one of our meeting rooms. It's actually not a meeting room, it's a research room. All of our meeting rooms have a album, and we chose Abbey Road because Abbey Road is where a lot of the really pioneering sound engineering was happening in the 60s, really experimental, and I think we can call it research of a kind. So what does that include? Well, probably the very most important thing that we do is interviews. And we do those by Skype, but we also travel, we go to customers, we go to partners, and have conversations about what's working, and especially about what's not working and what challenges they're facing that they need help with. But we also have a much stricter process internally where we really validate any initiative that somebody wants to proceed with. And this validation consists of looking back at the RFPs that we've had. Is this something that's really been asked for a lot? Evaluating our competitors. That's one of the things that we do in the Abbey Road. We install our competitors and see how they solve problems or if they address them. But it's not only external looking, there's also a lot of the internal research that Jan was alluding to and that voice-activated Magnolia demonstrated. So we have innovation days, and we have a lot of knowledge sharing within Magnolia. The other key thing I wanted to mention, you've seen it a few times, you're going to keep seeing it, is the nonstop innovation. So we want to get the value that we're creating out to the partners and out to the customers as soon as possible. Why wait? So that's why now, with every release, we're actually shipping new features. Of course, we're still being very careful to not make any breaking changes in minor releases, but where possible, we're shipping value as soon as we can. So let's get to the roadmap.
Yeah. So this is our public roadmap. If you go to Google and type in Magnolia CMS roadmap, this is what you'll find. We think that it's important to have a roadmap that is visible to everybody, especially you. And the nature of roadmaps is that roadmap is a plan, and plans can change. So columns on this map also shift. I'll explain first what these columns here mean. So going from the left, the now column are items that we're right now working on. Developers actively working on, and something is already shipping. The next column are things that we are validating and specifying. The validation framework that Topher mentioned is being used here. We think that these would make sense, but we haven't completely verified or completed the spec on them yet. And the later column on the rightmost is items that we think we should probably be doing something about, but we haven't committed to yet. So when you go to this roadmap and look at the items that are happening, the further left you go, the more reliable it gets. And I want to call out a few items from here as examples of what we're working on right now. So here on the bottom left, we have a card called tagging content. Tagging content is very important for editors who manage large amounts of content. When you really have lots of content, you need to be able to group it. You need to be able to aggregate the content based on tagging. And tagging is also a key enabler for effective search. So what we're building here is better tagging features in Magnolia. Tagging is going to look like this. This is a UI mockup. It's going to look colorful, joyful, and it'll be very easy to use. You simply hit a keyboard short, select a few items, hit a keyboard shortcut, and start typing tags. The system will auto-complete. It will suggest tags that have already been entered, and you can also enter new ones. And the key differentiator between categories, what you have in Magnolia today, and tags is that tags are free-form, ad hoc. You can come up with them at the spot. An editor who is, for example, working on a travel site could select 5 tours and tag them with sale this week, and have a component on the site that would show those on-sale tours in a carousel. Next week, remove tags from those items, select the next 5, put them on sale. So very light, fast, and easy to use tagging features that are not click intensive, that rely on keyboard. And here's a close-up of what that tagging dialog would look like. So this is an example of a card that is in the now column, which means that tagging field is already working. It's working in our snapshot builds, and I'm testing it at the moment, and we hope to deliver this whole feature soon. What comes next, logically, is that column that will show how items have been tagged.
Yeah, so we just wanted to dive a little bit deeper, as you saw with tagging, into what is on the roadmap, what we're focusing on now in the next year. So headless has become a big topic. Actually, I'm kind of curious, how many people are familiar with that term, headless CMS? Okay, most of you. Last time I was at, nobody had heard of it, so that's interesting. I guess it's a CMS crowd. So obviously very popular now. People have been using Magnolia in headless fashion or in a hybrid fashion already for years. But now with so much noise about the pure play headless CMSs, we realize that there is a bit of a gap for the people who are flocking or very interested in these pure play CMSs that we feel that we can fill with our enterprise features. Things that are missing in a lot of these pure play headless CMSs, like sophisticated workflow, user management, integration. So basically, I think our point is to do headless but without any constraints. So what do we see, where do we want to go in fortifying or improving headless offerings? So this is something that I alluded to. It's something that we're going to have a session about later. It's content type modeling, and where this is really coming from, it's kind of like with light development, we really focused on the things that people are doing the most. So let's optimize the things that people need most frequently. What do you need? You need to create content apps, because these are basically your content types. So we're going to make it, we're looking at the ways to make creating content apps and types as straightforward and logical as possible. And there's going to be a lot of, I think, follow-on benefits from making improvements there. For example, the next topic is quite related. Once you have a really nice content type, you can create an app from it, but you can also create a REST endpoint from it right away. And if the content types are relating well to each other through relationships, you can address what Vivian was also proposing to talk about, the content dependencies and publishing things that are related to the current item. So, but there's a third item. You've seen it teased already a little bit. In Headless, it's all about the CMS working within a bigger framework, providing its information in a way that's consumable by other items. So it's about having structured content. So with the page editor, the authors have complete freedom, but the content is not well suited for headless. It's not super structured. Whereas in a content app, you have the super structured content that you need, and this is very similar to what most of the headless CMSs are doing, but there's a problem in that by going away from something like the page editor and just having a form, you've totally taken away one of the reasons that people choose a CMS, which is to empower marketers or other non-technical users. So how should a marketer do their job? How should they do marketing when all they have is a set form? I mean, you can't create a landing page or anything like that. Which is why we are very pleased to be announcing the content editor, which you may have heard referred to as the Stories app. And basically, it combines the best of both of those worlds. So you have a great editing interface, a very clean look. This is actually the editor. This isn't the presentation. This is the editor. And it has form fields, but it also has a free-form area where a marketer can really create a unique experience. So let's just take a 1 minute quick overview. So it starts out like a normal app, but instead of opening a form, you get this very nice editing interface. You have a structured area at the top with collapsible outline areas, and then you have these blocks. And you can tab between the blocks very easily. And the blocks also respond. If I hit a backspace, now those blocks are going to combine, or if I break anywhere, it creates a new block, which makes it very easy then to move these blocks around. This is all with keyboard shortcuts, what you're seeing right now. So it's very much focused on the speed of editing as well. Then you can choose a block, and this is a very special block. We didn't have to implement a special Twitter block or YouTube block. We have what we call link unfurling, where we automatically get any meta information that many of those services are now providing. And then at the very bottom, you see we don't just have close and save, we have save and publish. So it's very much about streamlined content production. So in summary, I would say that what we're really producing is headless, but without any compromises. And then the other initiative that we're in the research stage on is, and look for more information on that soon, is about the composable UI. So in the interviews, we saw that a lot of people were integrating third-party services for analytics or anything, mail integration, but they were kind of context switching between all these different apps so much, and they were kind of losing their context, losing their place, and we want to look at how we can improve the Magnolia authoring interface so that it's easier to compose UI elements that bring these third-party services like A/B testing into Magnolia. So this is just show that research is happening. So in conclusion of the whole talk, cool stuff last year, even cooler stuff to come. But really, I think what we hope that you get out of it, this repeats a bit of what Jan was referring to, is that we are working to make you succeed. And we're doing that by our speed of delivery, which you've seen with all these features from last year, and by solving real customer problems. So the best part of the unconference starts now. It is really an amazing opportunity, a mix between the practitioners in the field working with projects every day and people from Magnolia working on the product every day. Today, we're going to learn about the latest techniques. We're going to learn about the actual best practices from the field, and we're going to influence the direction of Magnolia for the next year. So, let's get ready. All right. Thanks a lot.